Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of sinister tones, looking at songs that are eerie, creepy, ominous, definitely sinister, being that is the name of the week. Today we're going to be looking at something from Sigur Rós. The track we're looking at is Hún Jörð. That album art is something. This comes off of, I believe, their debut album called Vaughn. Let's dive in and see what they're bringing to the table today. Drastic change right here. We went from overbearing and dark into very light and ethereal. I like those harmonics on the guitar. Interesting tonality on that background instrument. The drums sound great here. Very tom-like, though I don't think they're toms. If anyone has insight into the instrumentation here, I'd love to know what kind of drums those are. Not a big fan of the snare sound. Interesting swirly effects. It's interesting that these more intense moments are so spread out and so short as well. We had the intro, we had the last section. Okay, they came back to it faster than I expected. There's still that noise guitar though that's carrying on. vocoder. Not a vocoder, heavily compressed layered effects on the vocals. It was more difficult to hear it in the stack, but there's pretty clear. Oh, with the rewind even. You know? That ending is ridiculous in the best kind of way. What ended up being, oh, okay, they're doing the skipping track thing, turned into a really fun way to wrap a song up. Creating the skipping, going into reverse playing, skipping again, heavy glitch skip, and then allowing it to wrap up where it was going, as if the needle clicked back in where it needed to be and finished up the track. That's fun. A very interesting way to wrap up a song, though, that is, it's weird to describe this. As many layers, textures, effects that are on the guitars, the synthesizers, the vocals in places, so much of the song feels, I got so caught up in talking about this. So much of the song feels acoustic to me. Well, that's a weird way to phrase it. The instruments, of course, are electronic or electric in some cases, but it feels, I don't know, maybe folky is the right word to it. It's tough to describe. It is obviously post-rock, I think, or maybe even post-metal at the end of the day, but it doesn't, like, when I think of the individual instruments, yes, distortion, compression, layers, effects, warbles, all sorts of stuff. It's obviously not acoustic, but when I think about the vibe of the song, I think about acoustic folk music more than anything else. I don't think I understand that. I don't know why my brain feels it this way, but it does. I find that to be really interesting, and that's why I was going to say that the ending is an interesting way to wrap up this track, because it took me a moment. I was about to say that it was weird to wrap up an acoustic track with record skipping, but it's not an acoustic track. It's just that's the way I feel it. Bizarre. They did something to my brain. I don't know. That's weird. Now this is a slow burn. What we get at the beginning is pretty much what we get at the end. We have some, we'll call it structure to this track, where we have an idea at the beginning, some stuff in the middle where we kind of bounce between some smaller ideas, and then the outro. But what's interesting is that they're all the same section of the song. You see, this is what I call a block-based way of building a track, where you make a bunch of ideas. We'll just call them blocks for physical representation, and you'll stack these blocks on top of one another. You can remove blocks if you would like, and then you just get a stack without that piece in it, or you can add more blocks to this stack. But the blocks themselves don't really move. That's how so much of this song reads to me. There is a drum pattern. Granted, we get a small expansion of that when we bring the full kit in towards the end, but it's still a big kit put on top of this same running tom idea. It's more of an expansion of that idea, maybe even another layer of percussion on top of this tom run. And I still don't think that's a tom. I think that is a traditional drum right there. But we'll touch on that later. The guitar parts in here, they're just the part. The atmospheric sounds, they're just the sounds. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. And so there's so many layers though that we have a plethora of combinations of them. And we can say, what if we only have these three? Well, that's a section. What if we add a few more to it? Well, now we're building out the evolution of the first couple of minutes of this track. What if we remove some of these softer ideas and put in these really big heavy guitars? Well, now we have that big overbearing section around minute 3.5. It's not so much about crafting a song. It's basically flipping switches. We'll turn these on, we'll turn those off. We'll turn these off and turn these on. But the way that these different sounds, the textures of them, the timbres of them work together creates a feeling of flow through here. This is a song that generally has lower moments, rises to high. Well, actually, we start pretty high. Dip down, rise up, stay up here, dip down, stay down here a little bit, rise up. And the lower sections all kind of feel unique. The higher sections all feel unique. But at the end of the day, if you just turned every switch on, that's the song. We're just choosing what to omit in specific sections. And so it is a slow burn in a sense. It is one idea with lots of variation across a 7-minute run, which makes this 3 out of 3 for very focused tracks. I think it's really interesting that I said, hit me up with some sinister suggestions, and so far, the popular ones are all single-focused ideas. I find that to be very interesting, actually. We don't have anything progressive. We don't have, lengthy linear tracks. It's all, here's a vibe. We're going to sit within it for a while. But I do like this approach here. It keeps the song fresh and moving throughout, even though Honestly, it's just one section for the entire song, but it has good pacing, it has good momentum, it has rising and falling action, good contrast and dynamics. It's a solid track for being as focused as it is. There's also two main ideas here. We have a much softer side of things. In fact, we kind of started off here. We had some tension in a short little 15-second intro, and that kind of gave way for this very ethereal, light, almost inviting sound. We have some gorgeous ethereal vocal work going on with some very light harmonic work underneath it. And I was really confused because there's nothing sinister here. This is what I'm being presented with for Sinister Week. That was a fun little thing there because the other two tracks have been all sinister all the time, and this one has movement to it. It's a nice change of pace for the week. From here, though, we don't really see much of this anymore. It does feature in some sections. The ethereal vocals are rather consistent throughout, and we do have the lighter instrumentation as background to future sections. But we don't ever return back to this calm. We slowly layer in ideas, and eventually a guitar sound pops in, and it's just noise. As far as I can tell, it's just some guy in the neck hitting random buttons, strumming really quick, and creating raw tension. It's noise. Harmonically unstable, sonically abrasive noise. This is the beginning of the end for the track. The entire rest of this song will begin to focus on heavy layering, on noisy layers, an emphasis on less and less palatable tones. This is the two sides of the song. What starts out rather calming, and for a while is still quite listenable, begins to dissolve into noisier, dronier, feedbackerier tones. And it begins to embrace the chaos of noise and begins to distance itself from more traditional harmonious melodies. There is a certain point in the song when I began to notice we're kind of peaking on this. We have this noisy guitar here. We have multiple drum parts going on. We have ornamental ideas that are no longer completely supportive of everything that they're playing with because there's disruptive sounds in here now. It's only adding to the clashing ideas. The volume is louder than ever, at least the perceived volume. I think the actual volume is fairly consistent on this track. There's a lot of layers here. The vocals that are still quite ethereal are being drowned out by everything. And it was about this time that I kind of realized all of this darkness was beginning to scoop in around the outsides. It was beginning to swallow everything palatable. And that's when the outro popped up. And just noise, just grit, just texture, and screaming. Now, the interesting thing about the screaming is that it is heavily compressed, and this was actually touched on a little bit prior. This was a really great way to slowly ease the listener into this because we had some effect drenched vocals around minute 5 or so. Given all the layers around it, I couldn't quite pick up on what it was. I guessed it was a vocoder, but after some of the layers disappeared, I got a clearer picture of it. No, this is just heavily compressed, heavily modified vocals, which I guess in a sense, it's technically what a vocoder does, but I'm thinking this was more done in post-processing. Regardless, we begin to introduce a heavily compressed vocal style that naturally attunes our ears to this white noise that the screaming will eventually embody. It's a very nice way of sort of easing the listener into all of this. But the ending here removes anything palatable. It has been completely destroyed, swallowed, however you want to visualize it, and all that's left is heaviness, weight, pain, grit, screaming, white noise, tension, and then the record skip. I don't know what all of the intentions are here. I'm hoping the lyrics might give me a little bit of extra understanding to this. But it certainly sounds like a perversion of an idea, a twisting of a concept. Because, like I mentioned, technically speaking, what we start with is pretty close to what we end with. There's just a really natural transformation along the way as we start adding new ideas on top of the foundation and start removing the older ideas. And the fact that the clean vocals are still there pretty close to the end and eventually get morphed into the compressed cleans, I think that just is a way of highlighting this element of transformation here. The drum pattern, the harmonies, the chords, there's a lot of ideas retained throughout the entire track, but sonically, the textures of it, the layering of it, the density of the track is what changes over the course of it. And I find that to be really interesting where the core is the same, but what's perceived is radically different. They do a fantastic job of crafting this narrative in this track and doing it in an evocative and entertaining way. For a post-styled track that's very similar from start to finish, it caught my attention and held it for the entirety of the run. It took something that started out rather light and clean and made it filthy and heavy by the end of the song. I don't know what the track's going to be about. We're going to get to some lyrics right here, but just on a musical level, I'm completely sold by the artistic elements here. And even if the lyrics somehow disappoint me in any way, I think just coming at this song from the musical perspective is something that's going to have it stick with me for a while. Let's dive into some lyrics. This is clever. I like this. Now, I think you have to read a little deeper to get the ending. I'm going to make a hypothesis of it by the end of this little lyrical dive here, but just the concept of this already captures me. It starts off, says, "Our Mother, who art in earth, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on us as it is in you." Now, this is an interesting inversion, alteration of the Lord's Prayer. But instead of praying to the Christian God, there's a prayer to Mother Earth here. I really love that. Let's continue on though. "As you send thy angels every day, send them to us as well, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against you, and lead us not into sickness, but deliver us from evil, because yours is the earth and the body and the health." There's not a lot of line changes in the last few, but I really like this shift here. We're going to do what we can for the earth, and we ask that the earth help us back, because you are, well, I guess let me rephrase this. We're going to do what we can to help you, Mother Earth, in hopes that you'll help us, because you are the earth. You are not only one that is an entity upon themselves, the planet, but you're also the house for all of us. And then it ends with the word amen. It's just how the Lord's Prayer ends, but then there's screaming. not too sure about the screaming. My best take on it is that most people don't take care of the earth. Maybe it's a representation of the earth screaming. Maybe it is the fanatical shouting of someone who finds that their love for this planet is not reflected by those around them. Like I said, I'm not sure how to read that, and I also find the more sinister tones towards the end of the song don't really line up with the lyrics themselves. So I find this to be an interesting song. As these lyrics go on and continue to finish this prayer of a synergy, we will live our lives protecting the planet because we live here. We want this to be a place that we can live in, but we also, in a sense, maybe figuratively, maybe spiritually, view the planet as its own entity. It is Mother Earth, much like a deity. How any of this relates to the noise and destruction and overbearing weight that the song ends on, that's beyond me. I don't quite understand that. But I suppose this is where this wraps up. Those lyrics are translated from Icelandic, so maybe there are a couple of lines that aren't necessarily directly translated, but I'm going to assume that keeping the words as close to the Lord's Prayer as possible was probably part of the translation process. And I think it works best through that lens. But maybe there's something in the lyrics that would help me understand also why the ending goes in the direction it does. These are my thoughts on Hún Jörð by Sigur Rós. Let me know what you thought of this. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, do you have your own perspective or opinion on this? Put all of that down into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.